girl. Okay guys, we're back. Talked about doing a video on my boat. It's just an old flats boat. It's a 1988 model Shoalwater 21-foot flats boat. I think really back in the day, you know, the big names out there on the flats back in the early 80s, you know, to mid 80s was, you know, Dargo. Of course, Dargo is the original. But down here in shallow water running down here in the valley, the Dargo Boat Works company was started by old man Dargo. I think way back in the, I think originally what he did, if I remember right, the history of it, he built a flats boat for himself because that was before the intercoastal waterway was dredged through there, and so there was no deep water. It was all just real shallow flats, and the majority of the boats couldn't get out there. So he liked to fish, and I think he built it in his garage. I think that's how it started out, if I remember right. And he made a boat that would go out there. And then his friends, you know, basically I guess said, hey, can you make us one? And then that's how it just kind of evolved into a business from there. And they became Dargo Boat Works. But for the original shallow running boats down here in the lower Laguna Madre, Dargo was one of the first ones, if not the first. But the big names back then were Shallow Sport, most definitely. I mean, if you look at the majority of the boats that are out there, scooter styles, but that original design, not the ones that they're making now, which are catamarans, but the original one, which is that hydrofoil hull on the front. A lot of them copied Shallow Sport. So Shallow Sport was really hit it big out here in the flats when they came to town, and very popular. It's a really good boat that they put out. But their original one, the best model that I always thought that they put out, if I was ever going to fish off of a Shallow Sport, if I could find it, was the old fan model. You can't, Scooter, you can't even find those. If you could find those, you need to pick it up. It's because you know, just a regular scooter how it sits, but on the pontoons that sit in the back, instead of them being straight like you see on all the Shallow Sports, they fan out like that. It's a fantail. I think they called it a fantail model. It was made way back in the day in the 80s. I think maybe into the 90s, and then I don't think they make that production line anymore, but that by far is the most shallow drafting Shallow Sport boat that Shallow Sport ever made, is the old fantail model. And if I was gonna get one, that's one I'd get. And you could only get them in scooters. So way back in the day, they only made scooters. They didn't make them with walls like they make them now. Shallow Sport was a scooter boat. It was designed to compete with the Dargo scooter because that's the original one. Dargo had his scooter that he made, and that's what everybody started fishing out of down here. And then of course everybody else is, you know, Johnny come lately, before you get to all the Florida groups and stuff that came over here to start making boats and selling their products. But the big names out there, you're talking New Water, you know, is one very excellent boat. It's a very high-end boat now, but it definitely would get into skinny too. And generally they're just scooters also. I mean, they may make one with sides now. I don't really keep up with them. But all those that I'm talking about, Dargo, Shallow Sport, New Water, they were all originally scooter boat manufacturers for shallow flat boats to fish the lower Laguna Madre and the upper Laguna Madre. And you can't take anything from any of them. They all make a good platform. They all have their pros and cons, but they all get you out in the skinny water. But Shoalwater was not really a big brand, and I think they really hit it out of the park when they made this boat. this series style. That first one I think came off production is in mid 1984, and mine's an 88 model, so that's 4 years later, you know, of the production line. So it's a fourth series of this style of flats boat. And when they came off with that one, that's the one that I had the experience of riding out to the flats in with my brother's friend that had the boat. It was either an 84 or an 85 model, mid 84, early 85. Shoalwater 21-foot flats boat, just like the one that I have. A little bit different configuration on it. The older model Shoalwaters have the more inset of the transom with a flat little step deck between the two pontoons. I don't know, you could store something in there, I believe. There's a box in there or something, I really don't remember, but I seen, if I recall, that's how his boat was. This one doesn't have that. They did away with that to give you more walking room around the back. But other than that, the hull is exactly the same, the width is exactly the same, the length is exactly the same. The only thing that's changed up on this one compared to how it was originally designed is there's a trolling motor on it now, which they didn't come with. This style of console, they didn't have this style of console, because this one originally didn't have no live well in it. And it was just one of those self-aerated ones in the pontoon in the back that picked up water as you scooted across the water. That's how most of them did it. This is an old base stealth console. It came off of a base stealth because it has the live well right here under the seat where you sit up front. And it makes it easy access for people fishing in the front, people fishing in the back. Because like on my Dargo, the issue that I had with my Dargo is a couple of things. Is the deck was a lot higher, so you had to step up higher. The room inside to walk around and fish, it didn't have a lot of room because the console took up most of it. There wasn't a lot of walkable space. It was a 7.5 foot, but at the top. It was 7.5 at the top because it flared out, and when it came down it was 6.5, so it dropped a whole foot on that Dargo 170 Scout that I had. But it still got in skinny water. I mean, I pretty much went everywhere in the bay in that boat, just like I do here. There were just a few issues that I had with it, was the fishability on it, the room on it, but it's perfect for one person. If you're just one person by yourself, it's a great one-person boat. I mean, fabulous. I mean, you can't, hands down, it's a good boat. Because like I said, I used it for 20 years, so that ought to tell you. And I never had an issue out of that boat. It never left me out there. I always came in, and it always got me back. It took me out and got me back. Never had any problems with that. I had an old Evinrude 88 on the back of it, and never had any problems out of that engine. Just did the maintenance, and you know, the old two-strokes, there's not much maintenance to them. You know, change the plugs every now and then, change the lower unit every now and then, change the impeller on the water pump every now and then, and that's really it. This motor here, since it's a 4-stroke, is a lot more higher maintenance. So, you know, in that respect, I kind of miss the old 2-stroke because it was real low maintenance and they ran forever. I mean, virtually problem-free. As long as you did the maintenance on them, I ran it for 20 years, never had to put a lower unit on it. You know? So, it was a good boat. But I wanted something that was a little bit bigger platform that got in the skinny water. And so this is how I came about it. Was back in the 80s, I told you guys in the other video about my brother's friend had a Ranger bass boat. Well, now that I was thinking about it, it wasn't a Ranger, it was a Cajun. So he had a Cajun bass boat, and we used to go out to Bird Island and just go right around to the side there and park and anchor off and fish. And I mean, we'd clean up. We'd catch reds, we'd catch trout. All the trout that we caught were 24 and up. I mean, between 24 and 28 inches, no problem, man. And back then, you could keep 15, so you'd fill up the ice chest. You got 3 people in the boat, one fishing on the front deck, one fishing off the console, and one fishing off the back seat back there. You know, just on bottom at night, fishing. And we didn't even use live shrimp. What we used to use, which is interesting, is we used to go stop off at the low water bridge out here at the Port of Harlingen, and we used to catch the shad. And we used to put the shad on, and we would ice them. We'd put them on ice and salt to keep them hard, because the key was to keep them fresh and keep them hard, because once they became soft, then nothing that would feed on them would be the hardheads, the catfish out there, you know, the saltwater catfish. But if you kept them hard and preserved, boy, man, those reds and those trout, they would tear it up. And it just seems like I still want to say that they still feed on them, but it just seems like it's kind of changed, that they go more after the mullet now. It just seemed like back then, the primary bait to have, if you're fishing at night and on the bottom, wasn't shrimp, wasn't mullet, it was that shad. That shad, and same thing, about your finger's length, finger long shad, but it had to be nice and hard. You needed to keep it crisp, because you couldn't keep them alive. They died real easy. And you used to just take one cast. All it took is you stopped off at the old low water bridge, which I don't think it's even there anymore, and you'd make one cast, and you would have a whole net just brimming with bait. It was just amazing how much bait was in the Arroyo at that time, all those years. Like I said, you know, back then when I used to fish, it seemed like it was endless, that this would go on forever, you know, but the ecology changes. Now you got to go to a lot of places just to catch enough to, you know, bait to go. So, you know, just the times have changed. We just need to be better stewards, you know, at that natural resource that we have, because it is limited. Because, like I say, it's even catching bait's not the same. Because you see, all it took, you took one 12-foot cast net and you threw it out there off the bridge, and that was it. And you'd have a hard time lugging it up because it had so much shad in it. And you put it in the ice chest with salt and ice and put it on the boat and go out and go fishing. And it used to clean up on the reds and the trout, the speckled trout with those guys. But anyway, so had that Cajun and went out on a few runs with him. And Cajun is a bass boat. It doesn't have a tunnel on it. The engine, I think he had a 140 or a 150 off the back of that thing. I don't know why I keep thinking it was a 140. It may have been. I mean, it would fly up and down through the channel, but when you got out to the flats, when you got into that 2 feet water, I mean, it had a 25-inch, I want to say, lower end unit on it. So it would not, it'd be in the mud, you know, and the water pump would be in the mud, be clogged up, and it'd be chopping mud, and it would overheat. So it overheated one too many times, and one night we were out there, really overheated it, and blew the head gasket on it, and the power head, seized up the power head on it. So we limped back in barely. I mean, just real slow. So when they looked at it, it had to get fixed. So while that was getting repaired, he looked into getting another boat, and he went up to Port O'Connor because he heard about Shoalwater, that they were making a new series of boat that was a big boat, and that would fish the skinny water, just like a scooter would. But you'd see the Dargles scooters out there, you would see the shallow sport scooters out there in that skinny water, and they'd be fishing it, no problem, getting up and moving around, no issues. And this one would have sides on it, and it would be just as comparable to any of those little scooters, but it would be bigger. Because back then, the biggest scooter you could get from shallow sport was 18 foot. That was the biggest one they made. That was their biggest model. You know, heck, now I think they make them 25 feet now on these new catamarans, on the new scooters. You can get them 25 feet long. And but those are $100,000 boats, you know. But this one was going to be a 21-foot boat that they were putting out, that Shoalwater was putting out, and it would be just as good as Dargle or Shallow Sport or New Water out there in the skinny water. And so I guess he went up there and he checked it out, and he liked what he saw, so he had one made for him, had it color to the same color as his truck, custom tinted. Put a 175. The biggest motor that you could get on a flats boat back then was a 175. They made bigger motors, but not for flats boats. Flats boats only were all, I think 150 was the big dog, but then that 175 came out. Now you can hang all the way up to 400. I think they might even have a 500, a V8. I'd be surprised, but that wouldn't surprise me that they have a V8 out there that somebody makes a V8 that you can hang off the back of a flats boat. But you can get up to 400 horsepower now, for sure. 400, 450 easy. And that's a lot of power. That's a lot of engine to be streaming around out there in the flats. But anyway, so that's what he did. And when he got that boat, like I said, I never had a boat till I bought my Dargo in '97, and I used to always have to go out with somebody that had a boat. And when he got that boat, he used to take me and my brother out, go fishing with him, and that's how I learned to be a flats fisherman. Because he used to hit the places. He used to hit Bird Island, Rattlesnake Bay, Green Island, and every now and then shoot on down to 3 islands and stuff like that, but you didn't need to go anywhere because everything was right there. You caught everything right there, especially Green Island. Back in the day, Green Island was a spot. I mean, you caught everything at Green Island. Because usually in the grass flats, you don't catch drum. You don't catch drum in the grass flats. But at Green Island, you sure did. You caught them out there for some reason. They were hanging out there all the time. You caught a lot of drum out there. Every now and then you'll get one running through there and you'll pick him up and you'll catch him, in the grass flats, but not like in one right after the other. You throw your pole out there, you catch a drum, reel him back, and then you throw it out there again and you catch another drum. That's how it was over there. It's not like that anymore. I mean, they stick more to the channel, more to where there's structure, along the bridges down there if you want to catch it. They school up a lot up there in Baffin Bay. You'll see big schools of them, schooling up, in that area because there's a lot of oyster beds and stuff in that area. So, it's just not the same. You still catch them, but not like you used to. You used to catch your limit no problem back then. 'Cause I think back then the trout limit was 15, the red limit was 5, and I want to say the drum was the same thing, was 5. And they have all been reduced since then. Trout limit now is 3, and even back then there was no oversize on trout. I think the low end was 15 inches. I believe it was still the same, and you could have 15 of them, but there was no oversize limit, if I remember right, on them. You could keep them whatever size over. Now you can only keep 3, and they have to be between 17 and 23, and you can't keep anything over 23. Like that 26-inch trout that I caught in the video that I just posted. Back in the day, you could keep that. Well, even actually, a couple of years ago, you could keep that. Because you can keep one over 25 as part of your daily bag limit, but they've taken that out since the freeze this last year that killed a lot of the trout in the bay, and they're trying to get the population back up. But if we would have been more smart about the resource back then and not kept all the big ones like we used to, it may be a whole different scenario today. Because you got to remember, the big gator trout, so let's talk about the gator trout. When you're talking gator trout, pretty much all the gator trout are females. The males usually top out about 24 to 25 inches. The females are the ones that you see that get bigger than that. They go from 25 and into the 30s. So if that female is out there producing and laying eggs, pretty much any female that's going to come off of her is going to be just as big as she is, when it grows up. So that's why you want to preserve that line, to keep that population going. And we didn't think like that 30 years ago. We're just like, well, it's unlimited. It's always going to be there. And now we're seeing the end results. Yeah, there's been a few freezes and stuff and that, but really it's the overfishing. I mean, we're not in a terrible place, but we just don't want to get there. We just want to we want to get the population back up, keeping those big breeder trouts so that they lay more, that they're more and more and more, and it's just a chain reaction. Because it used to be that way, because I'm telling you, I used to catch them 24 to 28 all the time right there, fishing on the bottom at Bird Island, you know, and eat overnight with using just that finger shad that I'd catch at the low water bridge, and we'd fill up the ice chest. But like I said, that's just the way we were taught. It's a generational thing. We were taught to fish like that. Bring home, you know, you got to go out and bring home the fish so we could have something to eat. I mean, because we weren't from a rich family. You know, we always ate a lot of fish. You know, hunted too. We used to do a lot of hunting, so that's how we ate. But now, you know, we just need to approach it differently, and all of us. I mean, I'm just as guilty as anybody else. You know, but now I can see that, hey, it's a limited resource and we need to preserve that. So any of the big ones should go back. You know, whether it's reds, whether it's black drum, whether it's trout, those are your breeders. And really, if you look at it, when you talk about being edible and everything, the ones that are the best eating are the smaller ones anyway, and the lower slot range. That's one thing that I've learned, that they just taste better. The bigger ones are fun to catch, but the smaller ones taste better. So, but anyway, let's get back to the boat. So anyway, he'd take us out, and we'd go in that Shoalwater. And back then, Bird Island isn't like it is that you see now. You see how you have all that water? If anybody that's been out there, there's water. There's always water behind Bird Island. Back then, that wasn't the case. A lot of that area was dry, because there wasn't a lot of water in the bay back then, and there was a lot of sandbars sticking up out of the water, and you had to navigate through there. And then sometimes you couldn't even get across there. And what he'd do with that old Shoalwater that he had, he'd just shoot across them sandbars, no problem, man. I mean, no problem. I couldn't believe that, how that thing would just jet right through there. And that's why it left a lasting impression with me, how shallow it could get in. Because he would go around the back side when most boats would only go so far, and they'd turn around, and he'd go all the way around it and come out the other end. The sandbar situation down there has changed. The sand is always shifting. It just depends on what storms come in. It's going to define how those sandbars form. Because when I first got my Dargo boat in '97, my first time I put in, and we put in at a night fish, and it was me and my brother. We took it out, and we were going to do the same thing like we always saw his buddy do, go right around that backside of Bird Island and park right there and catch, just like how we always caught what we caught with him when we were on his boat. And I hit a sandbar right off the bat, ran it right up on there, man. Brand new boat. You know, and so that just showed me that it was under the water. You couldn't see it, but it was there. That just showed me that that Dargo didn't perform the same way that this Shoalwater boat did. That it wasn't the same. Yeah, it was a shallow running boat, but it didn't skim across the top of those, across that real super skinny water. And we had to get out. We had to push it off the sandbar, and because it was already dark when we put in, it was nighttime. It wasn't daytime, so you couldn't even see it anyway. You know, trying to flash the spotlight, but trying to always visually see how we go. But I did. I hit it, and that was my first hard lesson learned right there. I mean, it didn't do any damage to the boat. It just went. We weren't even going that fast, and it just stopped. And you know, you were just right on top of it. But we had to get out and shake it around and pick the motor up and push it off of it. But lesson learned. But it's not the same like that over there. You can pretty much now, I don't care what boat you have, as long as it's a flats boat, you can go around there no problem and run circles around Bird Island. You couldn't do that back in the day. There were sand islands everywhere up and down there. You had to navigate in between them in that area. So the sand has shifted and it's changed, and it's the same thing at Bird Island too. There used to be two big sandbars that stood out of the water all the time over there, and it's not anymore like that. It's pretty much almost all gone under the water. So it has changed. But that's what we did. We rode with him, and You know, like I said, I was really impressed. It left a lasting impression. Like, wow, this boat could do anything that a shallow sport could do anything that a Dargo scooter could do, and it was a big boat. It was bigger than what they had because they only had 18 footers. This was a 21 foot. And then that's when, once these guys came out, that's what made them famous, is that you had a big boat that can get in the skinny water. So then Dargo and Shoalwater had to respond with that with their scooter series. You know, they always had the Scout series. That was the 210 model Scout. I think the earliest 210 model Scout, I'd have to look that up. I really don't know. I want to say mid 80s. I want to say probably around the same time that this thing came out, because they saw what Shoalwater was doing and they wanted to compete in that market and not be left out. So all of them started making bigger boats. But Shoalwater was the first to do that. And that's what put them on the name and made them a household name, like Dargo, Shoalwater, you know, New Water, Shallow Sport. That put them up there in the echelon. This is the boat that made them famous, that put them on the map. And here it is, 30 years later. And this boat still runs, it still gets into skinny out there. It doesn't have the old 140 Seahorse two-stroke Johnson motor on the back. It's got a 2006 115 horsepower, four-stroke Mercury engine on the back. So, but the hull's still the same. Maybe a little bit different setup, you know, with the console, but other than that, the hull and design of how it sits in the water, floats in the water, and gets up in the water has not changed in 30 years on this boat, and it still doesn't. But anyway, that's how I ended up choosing this. I've been looking for a Shoalwater for a long time. After I was thinking like, hey, it's time to get out of the Dargo. I've pretty much fished it out. Time to let that one go. I wanted to get a little bit bigger platform to see how that platform worked than what I had. And that's when I started looking, because what was always stuck in the back of my mind was how would I remembered going out on that boat and how it would perform out there in the flats. And so I started looking, and I came across a few. I missed a couple of them, and this was the third one that I came across, and I got this one. It worked out. One, somebody bought one out from underneath me, which I was just waiting for the money to transfer, you know, and put into my account, and then I guess somebody came in, and then that was it. They just, I guess they had the cash right then and there, and gave him cash, so he chose that. But this one worked out. So I got 16 grand in this boat to keep it to where it is, to make it look like what it is. And that's not, that's some money, but it's not a lot of money compared if you look at the comparable boat that you would buy now that Shoalwater would sell. I mean, you're talking it's minimum $50,000, 50, 60 grand on upwards to, depending on what you rig it out with. I mean, if you rigged it out with towers and you know, all kinds of stuffs, you know, modern avionics and stuff like that, or you know, to navigate out there, you're talking, it can run you $80,000 for that boat, $100,000. But this is just a basic flats boat. That's all it is. And it does what I need it to do. I mean, it gets me out there, and it gets me to the skinny water, because most of the time the water I'm fishing in is on average 18 inches. You know, I do fish 14 inches, 14 to 18 inches. 14 is usually the shallowest. 10, I've been in 10 a little bit. I have been back there in some areas, but that doesn't happen that often. Most of the time it's usually 14 inches. Because, you know, when a lot of people say, oh, I got up in 14 inches of water, you know, because you went in, you know, the grass was right there. Well, what they're not telling you, they're only telling you half the truth. The water wasn't really 14 inches of water that they got up in. It was more than likely probably 2 feet of water, because you probably had a foot of grass, you know, and then below that foot of grass is the ground. So whenever I stop and I fish, I always take my measuring yardstick that I have to measure the fish off, and I put it in the water so I get an accurate measurement, because I'm gauging myself to see what this boat gets up in and what it does. because I want to know accurately what does it actually do. And the least that it's ever gotten me up in is about 8 to 10 inches, 8.5 to 10 inches of water. But on average, it's 14 inches. It's 10 to 14 inches, right in there. That 10 to 14 inch range, I get up in that all the time, no problem. It doesn't matter if it's sand, if it's mud, it gets up in that, no problem with that. And that's what I love about this boat. That's what Cassie loves about it. She loves this boat. She loves it better than the Dargle. You know, there's so much room for her to walk around on and roam. She just loves it. Plenty of room. But really, that's what it is. Just taking care of it. You know, having something that you can get out there, fish the shallow, fish the flats, because I love fishing the flats. I love chasing the reds down in the flats. Go searching for them, hunting them down, and finding where they're at. That's my game. Yeah, I'll do a little bit of fishing of the other stuff, but once I got hooked on flats fishing, I always wanted a boat. Always wanted a boat. Always desired it, because I always had to fish off the bank. But that's where it's at, man. So we can show you around the boat. Like I say, it's nothing fancy. It's just an old '88 Shoalwater flats boat. We can show you around. So, like I said, it's got an old trolling motor. This is an old motor guide. Motor guide is an okay trolling system. It's not real fancy. It's just a basic, I guess, sportsman line is what it is. And this thing's as old as the hills. It's nothing new. I want to say it's either a 45 or a 50 pounder. But I mean, it does what I need it to do. When I'm in really super skinny water, I'm talking like real skinny, I pick up the transom in the back on the big motor, and then I put this down. Because you see how I have it turned all the way up? I have this turned all the way up to where it just barely sits below the water line. So I've had this trolling me in water that's just, you know, that much further than this little thing. So I've been in real shallow water, and this works really great for that. You see how I chewed up the prop. So it works really good. It works really good for that. And I mean, it's getting its wear and tear. Eventually, I'm going to put something different on it. I just haven't decided what. I'm not set in my way yet on exactly, okay, I want this style. But this one's done its job. And it was used. It's used just like the boat's used, just like the motor's used. Everything here is refurbished. None of this was brand new. It's just an old refurbished Shoalwater flats boat. But it's great every time you get in it and you take it out. It's kind of like an old car. If you have got an old classic car and you take it out for that Sunday afternoon ride, it just is the greatest feeling in the world. And that's what it's like when you ride in this boat. And here is where we got the battery for the electric motor, and it just has one. I don't use that Nico Genus maintainer battery. It's a 2-bank battery charger or maintainer. I don't use that. It never worked well for me. It just it would charge one battery and it wouldn't charge the other one. The other one would never charge up. So I use these things now. Is what I use. Look, let me get this out to show you. So hold on. So what I use, I pick these things up, and these things work badass. I've got 3 of them. I got 2 for the 2 batteries in the back and 1 for this one. And that battery in there is really old. It's a lot older than 4 years, and it still works fine because these things really maintain them. It's a Pro Series 2-amp battery, and it works great to keep these things ready to go, locked and loaded, so I don't have any issues with it not working or not starting and having a dead battery when you put in down there. So the console, like I said, the console is just an old Bay style console. And the reason why I got this boat and had it set and with this kind of setup is because I like the live well. It's got a live well in it, and I put 2 extra. It's got a live well. I got a Tsunami, I think 800 gallon per hour pump that pumps salt water from the back when the boat's sitting in the water. It only works when you're sitting. If you're riding, like you're cruising, your cruising speed, it doesn't pick up any water because it's up out of the water because the boat's on plane. But when I'm sitting and drifting, I can turn that on and it aerates while I'm sitting. But I have these to keep the bait alive because I pick the bait up before I get down there, and it keeps them alive. And then when I'm cruising, that's what I use those 2 for. I started off with 1, and then I noticed that I had kind of like a, you know, I was looking at the total number of the shrimp that would die off on me. So it was kind of, you know, a lot of them. So once I put a second one in there, no issue, all of them stay alive. And then I can throw fish in there too, because you'll see in some of the videos I have fish with the shrimp in there, and it keeps them all alive. Running those 2 and plus the one that's on the boat. But I love this. I love this because, like I said, on my old Dargo, it was back on the pontoon, and every time you needed bait, if it was 2 of you fishing on the boat or 3 of you, it was always a hassle, because if you're fishing off the pontoon, you'd have to get off the deck, let the person get in there, get the shrimp, then get back up on there. So it was a pain. So I like this center where it's midway, where it's easy access, whether you're fishing the back or fishing the front, and it works great. It's simple. It's nothing fancy, just simplistic. Simple and effective. The console is like I say, originally I only had 3 gauges on it, so I put a full gauge set in there because this motor's so old. I want to know what's going on. I was told that the motor, when I got that it only had like, I think 235 hours or something on it, but it didn't have 235 hours. It's got a lot more than that. I don't know how many hours it has on it, but I found out that it has a lot more than that. When I repainted the covers for the motor, when I took them off, the whole lower steering arm and pin was completely rusted out. And so that's how I know for sure that thing's been sitting in the salt water and been used in the salt water for a long time on that old 2006 Mercury 115 4-stroke. So yeah, you know, that's why I have all these extra gauges. It's got vacuum, it's got tilt trim, it's got oil pressure, temperatures pressure, of course the fuel gauge, the amp pressure, and then of course your RPMs. I even bought a speedometer. I got a speedometer still in the box that belongs to this whole set, because I bought the whole set. I got the whole set, I want to say online from marine.com, I believe. They had like a special when I just bought the whole set. I don't remember what I paid. I think I don't know. It's a nice set. I mean, they're nice. They're the old style, real nice. The brand is Faria. I don't know if you can see that, but Faria is the brand, and they're really nice and detailed. So quality made. They're quality made. I don't remember what I paid. I think they had a special. I think they were clearancing them out, because I don't think I paid a lot of money. I paid some money, but not like, you know, like $500 for all those gauges, because usually gauges are pretty expensive on a boat. I think I only paid like $100 and something for the whole set for all of them, because they were discontinuing that line or whatever, you know, and they were upgrading it and making a newer style of it or something. But I just got it at the right time. Then I put this panel in. It didn't have this panel. It had one that only had like, I don't know, 2 or 3 or something on it. I wanted to add all the stuff to it. So I used to have a light bar. And there used to be a sound bar that used to sit up here. The light bar never really worked for me. It always casted a shadow off the front of the deck, so I got rid of that. The sound bar, it had a every time the wind would come through it, it'd make a big high whistling sound, and so I 86 that too. I got rid of that. I don't really need it to be out there listening to music while I'm fishing the flats. I like the tranquility, you know, of what's around me and listening to what's around me than listening to music when I'm out there. If I want to listen to music, I can sit in my truck and listen to music. And then of course the old GPS, it's just an old GPS. It's a 2015 GPS. That's Garmin. I forget whatever it's called. I don't know if it's Land and Sea or whatever it is, but it does what I need it to do. It navigates. That's all you need it to do. And it's just an old shifter. Like I say, nothing's new. Everything's refurbished off of some other boat. Was put on here to make this. And so still see the lights. So I got these are the lights for there. They're green. So that's why the only reason why I got these switches is because my lights are green. I wanted something that matched my green lights, and this was the only switch I could find on eBay. I mean, it works. The voltage meter is already gone from being in the salt water. That doesn't work anymore. But all the other stuff still functions on it. So we'll see how long it lasts. It's been on here about 4 years. Then these are my lights on the boat that I have when I fish at night. I need to take it out and do some night fishing videos. We've been out on it a few times at night. So yeah, they work really good. And then I have another green light that I stick on a pole on a piece of PVC, 6-foot pole that's green also, that shines up the whole thing, that I plug in right here. That's what this plug's for. I run my spotlight if I ever need it, that's up in the front. And this is where I put my light at night that goes on the pole when I need it. And then I have another option too. I got 2 more right here if I need them too, that are cigarette lighters too, style. And then like these, I think they were the light bar, and one was a light bar, one was a sound bar. This is a light for the back of the boat, for the motor. This is for the tsunami live well. And then this bottom one is for this cigarette lighter here to turn it on and off. Because like right now there's no power to it, but if I want to power it up, I hit it here and then there's power down here. But it works pretty good. And then it's a lean-to style seat is what it has. I love this style. It works great. I can hide my ice chest under here so it's out of the way so I can walk. See how I have all this walkable space? This I didn't have in my Dargle. And that's what I love about this boat. Just here in the bottom, you can walk everywhere. No obstruction. And I always try to hang my poles here in the back. I got 3 that I use constantly. And then of course the GoPro camera that you always see in all the videos goes right here on this side. Because it's the most visible side when I'm fishing. Because I've always fished off this side of the boat. I don't like fishing off the other side of the boat because the trolling motor's in the way. That's the only reason why I've set it up this way. If it didn't have a trolling motor, then I'd be probably doing either side or whatever. But yeah, this lean-to works beautiful. It's perfect. My ice chest goes right under there. Out of the way, tucked away, no problems. That's my storage in there. And then of course the battery is in there. The 2 batteries that run the boat. But yeah, like I say, it works perfect for me and Cassie. And the best thing about it is it's paid for. That's at the end of the day, that's the best thing. It's paid for. It was a good investment, and so that's why I can go out and make videos pretty much I try to go out every week, at least one day on my day off a week. I try to go out and fish the flats. It may not happen every week. I had a dry spell there for like almost 2 months or 2.5 months. Well, the reason why I had a dry spell was because the road out here, they redid the road, and it was tore down for almost 3 months. And when because this is parked in my backyard, my back road entrance dropped 4 feet. I couldn't get the boat out. I couldn't even get my truck back here. And it took forever for them guys to come back and finish it. And once they finished it, I was back out making videos again. It started up around June, I think, in the middle of June. And I didn't get back on the water until late August. So or it might even been September. I'd have to look at the videos, because whenever I started making the videos again, that's when they finally fixed the road and I could get in and out. But they had it tore up so bad I couldn't even get the boat. I couldn't even get the truck in the backyard to get the boat out. So it sat. And so by it sitting, my power lift doesn't work anymore. I don't know what the problem is. I checked all the relays. The relays are good. There's no corrosion in there, and unless, you know, I need to get an ohm meter. I got an ohm meter. I got to double check it. So my power lift has been stuck in the up position, and that's how I've been running the boat. I run the boat like that all the time now. I mean, it works good. I mean, it doesn't speed me down the water, but I don't make any adjustment. It stays up like that all the time, and that's how I run it. From it just sitting, it stopped working. Why? I don't know. I looked in there. There's no corrosion on any of the wires. To take and open up to check the hydraulics, but there's no leaks on it anywhere, so I know it's not a leak from the hydraulic oil, because there's no oil leaks anywhere. I still think it might be relay related. I just haven't really looked into it, because, you know, it's been working, so why mess with it? I mean, if it works like that, I'm not going to worry about it. But yeah, that's where it sits. Like you see how Cassie loves it? She loves all that room. Plenty of room for both of us. It wasn't tight like the Dargle when we used to ride in the Dargle. She likes all the room. You know. I don't know what else to add. To let you guys know. Like I say, fishing is a matter of preference. It's, you know, you gotta get a boat that suits your needs. This boat suits my need. It does what I need it to do, and that's what I need it to do. I mean, some people have different needs, and they need luxury, or they need this, or they need that. Cassie and me, we don't need that. We just need a boat that performs, that gets us out there, gets us back, gets up in the skinny, and that's it. And this boat works perfect for that. It's a flats boat. It's not made for the deeper water to be going out there and chop, because when I broke down in Redfish Bay and that big swells out there, because you're talking, some of those swells were 5 feet that I was in when I was waiting for a friend of mine to come get me, because I couldn't get anybody to stop. Everybody just kept shooting by, man. No one would stop, you know. And I was lucky I had cell service, because usually I don't have cell service out there. And you know the Lord was looking out for me that day, because the phone worked. And while I was waiting, I anchored off, but I did a long line to try to keep the bow up into those waves, and we were just like that. But every third to fourth wave that would come, it was bigger than 4 feet, and it was coming over the bow, and water was coming into the boat. So I was having to bail the whole time to keep because I mean, the only other option would be to lift up the anchor and let it drift all the way to the shore of the King Ranch and just wash up on the shore there and wait for him there. But I didn't think that his boat could get in really shallow water like that, so I wanted to be in an area that I knew that his boat could get into. So we just kept bailing. But it worked out. I mean, he showed up and pulled us in fine, no problem. And on that particular instance, the issue that happened, I was just running along. I was coming back from the land cut, because we had camped out over there and did some fishing overnight, and then did some fishing in the morning. I was heading back, and just hitting those heavy waves in Redfish Bay, the pickup tube in the gas tank snapped right off. I guess it was brittle. Apparently they get brittle. I thought that polyurethane doesn't, it's supposed to last a lot longer than rubber, or plastic. It sure didn't, man. It was brittle, and it broke into like 100 pieces inside the gas tank, and it just snapped right off at the top and dropped. And so the motor couldn't get any gas, which I didn't know at the time. I knew it was a fuel issue. I knew the motor wasn't getting any fuel, but why it wasn't getting any fuel, I couldn't see inside the tank to tell at that moment. So now I carry an extra tank pickup tube in the boat to so if that ever happens again, I can just change it out there on the water and I'm ready to go. You learn from your mistakes, so we learn from our mistakes. But like I say, this boat's not designed for those big waves. If you're going out in deeper water, it needs to be calmer because it has low sides. The water will come right over that, no problem, because it's a flats boat. You know, just use it for its intended purpose. You can ride across it, no problem. Just don't stop. Like what happened to me because we broke down. It's not a good position to be in, you know. But anyway, everything worked out fine. We kept the water out of the boat. Cassie had 4 paws to help pail, so the more the merrier. It worked out fine. I mean, but yeah, like I say, fishing's a matter of preference. The reels that you use, the way that you fish, there's no correct way. Everybody has their preference when it comes to boats. They're all good, but this boat stuck with me for a long time because I remember how it performed out there and how it would outdo the boats in the flats back in the 80s. And that's why, you know, when I went to go buy another boat, when I was looking at getting a bigger platform, I said, you know what, I'm going to see if I can find one of these and relive the dream. And it's been great every time. I mean, I had good memories being taken out doing that fishing out there, and it's great every time I go out. You know, you relive the dream in it. And like I say, it's nothing fancy. It's just a regular 1988 Shoalwater flats boat, 30 some odd year old boat. I think 31, 32, 33 years. What is that? 32, 33 years old. It's been redone completely, so it doesn't have any issues. Eventually, yeah, I'm going to hang a trolling motor on it. Eventually, I'll update the navigation on it. And eventually, I will probably, if I ever have to, I'll hang another motor on it. I'm going to run that motor as long as it runs. You know, and then when it goes down, then I'll look at putting a motor on it. And then I'll make that decision then what size. Because you got to remember, the bigger you go, the less shallow water you're going to get in. Because it's going to make the... That's why, you know, that's why I don't have no... you always got to watch, because the more weight, you know, like how people, you see a lot of people out there, or you know, you probably have it too on your boat. A lot of people, what's fancy now is that that shade canopy that you put on there, and it goes, it straddles around your console and all that stuff, and it gives you a little bit of shade, and you hang rod holders and stuff. I don't have any of that on here because to me it's an obstruction for me. It would get in my way when I'm casting, because my poles that I fish with are 8.5 foot long, and I need that wide open swinging distance. If you're ever watching the camera when I'm standing on the deck, that lure or that cork almost swings and hits the camera every time I throw it off of the front deck, because I use 8.5 foot poles on here. If I was fishing like 6.5 foot or something like that, then yeah, you know, it probably wouldn't be an issue, but they would be in my way is what I'm just trying to say. So to me, it's an obstruction. And then on top of that, the biggest drawback is it puts more weight on the boat, and that's, to me, that's less shallow water I can get in. It's always a trade-off. You know, you put something and you have to lose something. You know, you have to decide what you want. And I want to fish the skinny water. That's why it's set up this way. And it works perfect. I mean, this boat, hands down, I love it. I mean, I'll fish out of this. I don't know if I'll ever buy another boat. We'll see. If I do, I've been seeing the smaller version. They make a smaller version. I saw a guy pull up in the dock here when I was just out last week, and he had one exactly like this one, but it was a 16-footer. It was an early 80s model. I don't know if it was an 88. He didn't really know what the year was, because I don't think they've had it registered. You know, I think they were out doing crabbing or whatever. They had crab traps. They weren't out fishing. But they use it to get back in those little shallow guts and stuff where their crab traps are and all that stuff. But it looked just like my boat, but narrower and only 16 feet long. It was probably like either 5.5 to 6 feet wide and 16 feet long. But the same setup as I have. But with the standing up console. It didn't have one. It had the old Shoalwater style that you stand behind and you drive it. Console on it. I don't know. if I ever come across something like that, I wouldn't mind getting that and restoring that. And then I could really get back in those really super shallow little guts that go in those real super shallow bays back on the really western end of Bird Island. Well, not Bird Island, I mean Rattlesnake Bay. There's some guts back in there. If you ever look at the satellite images, you can see them. And then the sand flats and some of that real skinny water out in the sand flats. You know, that boat would be perfect for her. But anyway, we're going to sign it off. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.